They're not giving long time anymore. They're trying to make some changes. So now they're killing them.
Chanda McGuffin has held her last event as a Waynesboro City Council candidate. She says her initiatives during her campaign included unity, growth, and progression. Recently, McGuffin presented a free showing of James Baldwin's documentary entitled I Am Not Your Negro. She warned the residents to stay focused and be vigilant about civil rights in their community.
Don't take this lightly. Oh, it's some women being killed. It's some white people being killed. Let me tell y'all something. Don't get distracted.
Many in the room became emotional as they sobbed during various scenes. Afterwards, the group held a discussion about the documentary. One by one, they spoke up about racism in America.
God forgives murder and he forgives adultery, but he is very angry and he actually curses all who do integrate.
Fathers were deists, they weren't Christian, and people refused to accept that. But that we still hold to that we continue to speak of this lie. It is causing a lot of discourse for many. I don't identify myself as a Christian in a community anymore because I have heard this used as a tool for so long. People hide behind it and justify their misbehavior, their hatred.
Another woman said racism remains in the U.S.
We don't face our reality in this country and history. We are our history, we live our history. So we are the only ones who can change. We're living history now, we're the only ones who can change it. Or we can sit back and have moral apathy.
And yet, another lady pointed out the similarities between the civil rights marches in the 60s and marches across America in 2017 and 2018.
Everything that they show in this film could have just happened last week.
Well, it did.
Sharon Fitz asked the group to compare the marches in Alabama to the recent March for Our Lives.
And think about the crusade back in Birmingham, right? You think about how they treated those children versus the way that they treat these children. I mean, it's a different time, but everything else is very similar except for the fact that, you know, these kids were empowered and allowed to be free and no one bothered that opportunity per se. They were given a huge platform.
Adolph Young Jr. says he has some concerns about young African American men who are not paying attention to the world around them.
It's up to us to be able to share with them what the story is, to help them understand that there's a narrative that's being painted for you, son. You may not be aware of it, but let me just help you to recognize some things. Just in a day, just take notice of some different things. Because maybe you just kind of looking beyond some things and thinking everything is okay.
Listen how James Baldwin explains the same subject at Cambridge University in 1965.
What this does to the subjugated is to destroy his sense of reality. This means, in the case of the American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and in the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock, around the age of 5 or 6 or 7, to discover that Gary Cooper came off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace, and to which you owe your life and your identity, has not in its whole system of reality evolved any place for you.
The Waynesboro City Council candidate told the group in the wake of the Ku Klux Klan members gathering in the city parks and distributing KKK flyers on parked cars in the city, she says it's time for Waynesboro city leaders to do the right thing for all residents.
So that's very important to me. As I've gone through this journey of running for city council, I have realized how large that gap is. I've realized how disconnected as a community that we are. Disconnected in our schools, disconnected in our leadership, disconnected in our churches, disconnected in in our community. We're just disconnected. And we have, allowed leadership in our city that don't reflect, our core values of us or what we want to see in the city. And so we've gotten to the point that we are right now.
Paul Oakley is the senior pastor of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Waynesboro. Pastor Oakley admitted it was difficult at times to watch the documentary.
To see the violence of the history of the past and to have such very recent examples of police violence against African American men, for example, we're not out of it. We're still living history. And it's an amazing and frightening thing. And at times it can feel overpowering.
During the civil rights era, 3 of the most prominent African American leaders were assassinated.
We don't have a right to be free, we have a duty to be free. So when you sit down on the bus and you sit down in the front or you sit down by a white person, you're sitting down because you have a duty to sit down, not merely because you have a right.
The time of these lives and deaths from a public point of view is 1955, when we first heard of Martin, to 1968, when he was murdered. Medgar was murdered in the summer of 1963. Malcolm was murdered in 1965.
In Waynesboro, Elaine Rackley for Breaking Through News.